Welcome back to our study called The Beginning of Civilization. We're looking at Genesis 4:16 through 26. And today we're looking actually at 19 through 24. So if you're following along in your Bible, turn to 19 through 24. And today we're going to talk about how sin corrupts. We see this obviously, very obviously, in the line of Cain here. So in this part of the text, we read of Cain's family and the descent of his line into evil. First, let me point out that this is an honest account of Cain's line. The Bible is a very interesting book because, often the argument against the Bible is that it's written by believers, and so because it's written by believers, then it's biased, it's tainted, and so you can't trust it. But think about this. If this is a book about if it's written by believers who want to just paint this rosy picture of who God is, of the world, of all this kind of stuff, why when you get to Cain, who is obviously evil, who's obviously turned against God, why would you show anything good about him? Normally the villains, we always try to paint them as being evil. Or actually today, if we're trying to portray the bad people, we often show the good things that they do to try to make it look real, right? That's what we want. If it's so evil, it's always just painted in this horrible kind of, there's no good at all, then it looks like it's a fake story. But an honest account has where you have an evil person does evil things, but there's also some things that appear to be good, and there's that mixture there, but they're still evil. And that's exactly what we find here in Cain's family. Take a look at the account. The Bible does record that Cain's family was very intelligent. They had a very intelligent, and they were the first to accomplish a lot of new things. Look at Jabal. Jabal mastered the nomadic life, living in tents, herding livestock. That's what he did. His brother Jubal, they name their relatives like we do, all very similar sounding names. Anyway, his brother Jubal was a musician and created the first stringed and wind instruments. There you go, boom, very intelligent, very artsy man there. Very creative person. You got a guy named Tubal-Cain. He figured out how to create things out of bronze and iron. So here's the first guy who figured out how to do these things. Very impressive. And they were just, generations from the beginning. These are some smart people. They were innovators, inventors. But unfortunately, we see that Cain's line was also contaminated. So it's an honest account how it shows the good, but then it's also, we have to show the evil, because that's what we're talking about here, really. And we see here recorded in Cain's line is the first polygamist. In the 5th generation from Cain, we find a guy named Lamech. In verse 19, attached to his name in the genealogy is the statement, and Lamech took 2 wives. Then if you look down to verses 23 and 24, we find the quotation from Lamech. This is clearly here to mark the depravity of the line of Cain. Cain's descendants did some great things, but Lamech represents the spiritual condition of the family. Lamech is a polygamist and therefore violates the intent and institution of marriage. Henry Law, speaking on Lamech's polygamy, said it this way, quote, thus the design excludes plurality, and therefore the ordinance grants but one wife. God gives not Eves, but Eve. Jesus adds his authoritative comment, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they're no longer 2, but 1. Matthew 19, 5 through 6. No sentence can be more explicit. 2, not many, shall be 1. Adherence shall be to the wife, not wives. But the design is frustrated when husband joins himself to more than one. Oneness then is broken into diverse parts. Affections, which should have one channel, diverge into distracting streams. Marriage is no more godly union, but confusion. It's not love, but jealousy. If marriage was to be a picture of Christ, think about this. If marriage was to be a picture of Christ, right, in Ephesians, that's what we find, then Lamech's relationship really ruined that picture of Jesus. Because Jesus only has one body. Jesus only has one church. But what Lamech was displaying was not that. So Lamech didn't stop there, though. He was also not just a polygamist, but he was also a murderer. I mean, look at what he boasts about in that little poem part that we have in there. It says, I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. Now, was this his song that he was saying? I don't know, but I mean, there's no grace or mercy or forgiveness in the heart of Lamech here. Sin has robbed him of these things. He claims vengeance when God says that vengeance belongs to him. Lamech says that his revenge is 77-fold. Let me quote from Ligon Duncan here. Quote, first of all, notice how Lamech takes comfort in Cain's sin. Who in their right mind would comfort in another man's wickedness? Lamech does. He rejoices in the fact that Cain murdered and got away with it. Then he goes on to spurn God's forbearance. He doesn't learn a lesson from the fact that God did not strike Cain down immediately. He exults in the fact that God didn't do it, and therefore he thinks he will be able to go on with impunity, rebelling against God. And finally, he scoffs. He's a scoffer at God, not thinking that the Lord will bring judgment. End quote. You know what? After reading all this and thinking about, wow, look at how you start with Adam and Eve perfect in the garden, and then we get to Cain, second generation, and then you go, how many generations later on, and you got guys who are marrying other wives, just snubbing their nose at God. It's sad to see how far things have fallen in such a quick time. And we might be tempted to despair at this point. But in our next lesson, we'll see that hope is on the way.